At Indalco, we don't just make aluminum wire, we make aluminum welding wire. There's a major difference between making steel wire and making aluminum wire. Steel has other elements to assist in scrubbing the weld puddle. It's these alloys within the steel wire that contend with dirt. With aluminum, you don't have this luxury. Contamination is devastating to aluminum. The wire has to be clean. If you have any kind of contaminant on the aluminum wire, it comes out as porosity in the weld and it will increase the amount of black smut. As a general rule, inferior wire is rough and dirty and easy to make, and it's that rough surface that gives dirt a place to hide. Given that contamination in aluminum is far more of an issue than it is in steel, what makes us so unique as a business is that we've recognized that the fundamentals that apply to steel don't apply to aluminum. By paying attention to surface condition, the chemistry, and the cleanliness of the wire through the entire process, and by making that process repeatable within a tighter-than-industry standard, gives Indalco an advantage. So we focused on those aspects of the business which will give us a superior performing product in the marketplace, at the expense of productivity, and therefore cost. Every reputable wire manufacturer measures the product they produce, but it's the standard that's imposed that makes the difference. The Lincoln Electric Company sets the world standard in steel wire, machines, innovation, and technology. When Indalco became part of Lincoln Electric, Indalco took that philosophy and applied it to the aluminum side of the business. To do that, we had to exceed the customer's expectations or the level of product that was in the marketplace to establish a differentiating factor. Industry standards define acceptable element content. Indalco has established its own internal standard that significantly exceeds those standards. With the rising cost of labor and the need for consistency and quality, more and more welding is going to be performed on fully automated and robotic systems. Indalco quality makes that possible. The more automated your welding is, the more consistent the wire has to be. Indalco wire is extremely consistent. Now, there are other suppliers who make exceptionally good wire, and it does, in cases, meet our standard to a degree, but their product variation within the AWS standard is greater than ours. We have tighter internal controls resulting in a consistent standard, and the way we measure quality here is very definitive.
The thing with welding wire is that cheaper is not always better. If they have less control over their chemistry, they can produce faster. Second would be in the shaving, which affects the smoothness of the wire and then ultimately the cleanliness. From a welding standpoint, it's not better at all. You've got to be concerned about what that weld is going to do in the field. You've got to go through the right amount of control in your process, in your plant, to make sure that wire is clean and smooth.
There are many ways to make wire cheaper, but you sacrifice quality. If you don't have to control chemistry, you can set your chemistry to give you the fastest possible production speed. It doesn't mean that what you produce is good for welding, but you produce much more wire in the same amount of time. If surface condition isn't critical, then you don't shave. You don't worry about what's on the surface of the wire. And cleanliness. We take such care in removing the drawing lube, the wire is absolutely clean. We then spool at a slower rate that eliminates the need for a lubricant. One of the biggest costs Indalco has is finding ways to take drawing lube off the wire at the speed at which the spooling is taking place. Indalco incurs the cost of shaving, cleaning, chemistry control, and surface condition. We have actually set our standards so much higher than industry standard that there's little chance of poor wire getting out of our plant.
We are the only manufacturer of weld wire in the world that has its own rod mill. This enables us to control our aluminum alloy chemistry from start to finish, and it also ensures a better stability of supply.
It's the processes and the methodology with which we process the wire from the chemistry right through to the finished product that makes us a superior supplier of welding-grade aluminum products. We have the ability to control all aspects of the wire manufacturing process. It's a fact that there's not that many companies in the world making welding-grade rod anymore, the raw material for most of our competitors. It's primarily because the alloying elements in the aluminum rod make the manufacturing of it difficult, and it's hard on equipment. That's why we have a rod mill. Aluminum ingot is easy to get and abundant, which gives us security of supply. And our foundry controls the chemistry and condition of the wire right from the very start of the process, giving us full control over the final product. Chemistry is important for consistency. The mechanical properties of our customers' welds are directly related to consistent chemistry. We sample, measure, and readjust each batch of aluminum to ensure that we keep the chemistry of our rods extremely consistent. It doesn't take much reduction in magnesium to lose your mechanical properties, resulting in the failure of your customer's parts. Our acceptance standard is much tighter than what is allowable by code. We're controlling our melt, and we use a smaller batch. We physically test the alloy, and we're closer to the furnace, which allows us to run at a lower temperature, so there's less chance for the chemistry to change due to element burn-off. But there's a higher cost to smaller batches. That's a negative, but it results in better quality and more consistency. And more than that, there's versatility to having a rod mill because we can make other grades or specialty chemistries for the specific needs of a customer. It's what happens between the right chemistry and the finished product that makes or breaks the final quality. We actually have a very tangible way of measuring quality. Not only are we more careful at every stage of the process, we actually take a photograph with a scanning electron microscope, and to the best of our knowledge, no one else does this. Some might use microscopes, but they don't create a 3D picture of the surface that is generated with a more expensive SEM. The SEM gives you greater detail, clearer detail. And most critically, it gives you a method to measure residue, which we will discuss in more detail later. This, combined with our other tests that include a spectrometer, ductility testing, weld testing, feedability testing, smoke testing, and a comprehensive lab, mean that we leave nothing to chance. And we don't just do one check. As soon as it's set up, we check with the SEM. If we're on a shift, we check twice during the shift. There's a random spool drawn out of every pallet that's checked. We have redundant checks with the SEM, and the SEM at the end of the process checks. It's not just done once in a while, it's done repetitively. Most wire manufacturers add a lubricant prior to spooling. It speeds up spooling and enhances feedability, but it can contaminate the weld puddle. We conducted a Six Sigma project to determine what was the leading cause of problems with aluminum welding wire. We determined that it was the lubricant left on the wire to make it feed and spool better. We clean and spool without lubricant. It makes spooling slower, but it results in our customer getting wire that's absolutely clean. Where we win against our competition is usually on this point. If a customer is having problems with porosity associated with lubricant, if they switch to our wire, the problem goes away. Absolutely clean wire leaves the problem of feeding the wire. Through testing, we discovered that if you made the wire extremely smooth, you didn't actually need a lubricant. This is where we focused our attention. Wire has a better chance of getting off the line in good shape if it's shaved several times before it gets there. Almost every manufacturer shaves, but Indalco shaves more than anyone. In the draw bench, the rod goes through 13 drawing dies. It's a fact that every time aluminum wire touches something, it puts an imperfection into the wire, even if it's microscopic. So rather than spooling what comes off the last drawing block, Indalco's third and final shaving is used to ensure that any imperfections that are introduced in the secondary drawing process are removed. Indalco is the only manufacturer that triple shaves. If we didn't shave, we could double our line speed, but we won't sacrifice quality. There's no denying that there's an added cost to the care that goes into our manufacturing. But the extra cost of starting with the best wire on the market at the beginning of your process is more than covered by the potential savings you enjoy by avoiding problems down the line.
We talk about the cost of making wire. What about the cost of not using a quality wire, like a product made by Indalco? If your station goes down for several minutes or an hour, there's a cost involved. if your station happens to be halfway around the world in maybe weeks or months, and if you manufacture a product that fails in service, the cost can be extreme.
Let's summarize what makes good aluminum welding wire and a good aluminum wire manufacturer. We make our own rod, which gives us security of supply and control over chemistry. We have extremely smooth wire as a result of 3 shaving stages. It improves feedability and leaves no place for dirt to hide. In the last stage of processing, we completely clean the wire, removing all contamination from previous processing steps. And we don't add spooling or feeding lube. Therefore, there's nothing left on the wire that could cause porosity in a weld. And finally, we have tangible testing at every stage of processing and following manufacturing to ensure that all of the above steps are achieved. So what does Indalco have planned for the future? More and better testing. As new methods of testing are discovered, we will incorporate these into our process. Our goal is to continue to be the benchmark of quality for our competition.